It leaks every 5 years, the amount of oil that was in the Exxon Valdez spill, which was a tanker, not a blow-up. And we know from the Gulf that you can drill offshore, go through a whole series of hurricanes, and have zero leaks. And we also know from the Gulf that when you build the rigs, they become reefs, and you actually have increased game fishing around the oil rigs, not decreased. And yet we have an almost ideological commitment to weaken America. I just want to say bluntly, bowing to a Saudi king is not an energy policy. Let me also say that anybody who talks to you about peak oil, ask them to go look at AmericanSolutions.com, where we are going to annihilate that argument. There was just an announcement at the end of May by the U.S. Geological Survey that they are having a 5,000% increase in the amount of natural gas that they believe exists in the Chukchi Sea just off of Alaska. They've announced recently that they've had a 2,500% increase in the amount of oil they believe exists in North Dakota in the Bakken Formation. And now, this last week, they announced that there's a second source of oil and gas near the Bakken Formation that may be as large or larger. The Brazilians have announced that they have discovered a 9,000% increase in the amount of oil off Brazil in the Atlantic, where the Brazilians have not stopped themselves from finding energy. And the domestic natural gas industry will tell you that with new technology that lets them go down to 8,000 feet and reach out as much as 4 miles in every direction, they are now finding so much natural gas in shale that in the last 3 years, they've added 100 years reserve to the American supply of natural gas. So the next time somebody tells you about peak oil and we can't find all these resources, you need to tell them about reading, and that it would be good for them to read what's at American Solutions that proves as a factual 2 + 2 = 4, actually in this case if you add up the 5 I just mentioned, it is inconceivable that you can sustain the intellectual argument that we are inevitably going to run out of things. And so I think it's very important. We need American energy for American national security, for American jobs, and for the American economy, and we need it now. Let me also suggest, if you're going to compete in the world market, we have to fundamentally rethink our education system. I think we have to rethink it not only at K through 12, we have to rethink it for our lifetime, because every American is going to have to learn their whole lifetime, and those Americans who did not get good education before they were 18 have to have a chance to catch up in a practical and realistic way. I'd like to replace No Child Left Behind with Every American Gets Ahead, and I would like us to innovate and develop new approaches until every single American has the opportunity to learn, and the only question is, will they put in the time and the discipline to learn? But it's not that they don't have the opportunity to learn. I have to tell you with some very pleasant surprise that President Obama has asked me to join Secretary of Education Arne Duncan and Reverend Al Sharpton to go around the country and ask states to adopt very strong charter school laws in which there would be unlimited charter schools. There are many areas in which President Obama and I don't agree, but I am delighted to work with the President when we do agree, and this is an area where he is showing considerable courage and taking on one of the strongest interest groups of his party, and I hope all of you will go back home, get his speech to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and feel free to quote him to everyone else in your legislature until you pass very strong and very bold charter school legislation. Now, there are a couple of clear steps. In 1983, we were warned in a nation at risk that our schools were so bad the country was literally imperiled. In 2001, the Hart-Rudman Commission warned that the second greatest threat to American national security was our failure in math and science education and our failure to invest in math and science. So we need very bold changes. I think, one, we have to measure those changes by results. We have to find out what works, and we have to be prepared to change over and over until everything is working so that everyone has a chance to learn. 2, we need transparency. We need to know our students learning and our teachers teaching, and we have to have the courage to make that transparency real. And parents have the right to know whether or not their child is learning, and citizens have the right to know whether or not they are paying for education that is effective. Third, parents have to have the right to choose a school for their child that they believe is safe and effective, and the choice should not be education bureaucrats. The choice should be with the parents. Fourth, we should adopt pay for performance. If a teacher is willing to go into a really, really difficult school, and that teacher produces world-class results and saves the lives of 30 students who get to go to college or vo-tech school instead of going to prison, that teacher should earn more for having gotten the job done, and we should be prepared to take on the fight of paying for performance and insisting on rewarding superb excellence. Beyond that, I recommend all of you, if you have any doubt about how much change we need, get a copy of 2 Million Minutes, a movie made by Bob Compton, who is a health entrepreneur who went to China and India. 2 Million Minutes is 4 years of high school. He has 2 Indian high school students, 2 Chinese high school students, 2 American high school students. At the end of that movie, you will be convinced that we're a country aggressively preparing for the 1956 Olympics. We are that out of sequence with reality. It's very sobering. If you doubt it, go to 2mminutes.com, where Bob Compton has posted the Indian 10th grade exit exam, which is in English, because all Indian academic education is in English, and no American has been able to pass it. You have to pass this exam to go to the 11th grade in India. By the end of the 10th grade, Indian students have had 4 years of physics taught by a physics major. That's how big the gap is. Now, some immediate small examples of change you can afford. First, adopt a law that says students that can graduate in 3 years get the 4th year of high school cost as an automatic scholarship to either vo-tech or college. You will immediately incentivize learning. Doesn't cost you a penny. Radically changes the environment of the school. Starts to reward people who actually do their homework, study hard, and get out early. I ask students all the time, how many of you could have graduated in 3 years? Every hand goes up. I ask, how many of you could have graduated in 2 years? Half the hands go up. I once asked, how many of you could have gotten out in 1 year? A kid in the back yells, how big is the reward? Americans love incentives. Americans respond to incentives. My daughter, Jackie Cushman, is here in the back, and she led a program last year with the foundation which paid 7th and 8th graders for doing their homework, the equivalent of working at McDonald's. It was in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Fulton County. And guess what? It turned out poor children liked being paid. They were willing to do their homework if they got paid. They understood the model. Now, a lot of education people say, how can you incentivize them? My question is, how can you lose them for 3 generations in a row and not try something? Fourth, and by the way, Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, like my daughter, had run an experiment in Chicago paying students and does believe it's a worthwhile project in the poorest neighborhoods to fundamentally change behavior. Fourth, if you get a chance, visit the College of the Ozarks or one of the other 5 work-study colleges in the United States. College of the Ozarks is in southern Missouri, founded in 1906. You can only apply if you're poor enough to need student aid. They have no student loan program. Every student works 15 hours a week. They work 2 40-hour weeks during the school breaks. That pays for their tuition and books. If they're willing to work 12 weeks during the summer, 40 hours a week, that pays for their room and board. 92% of the students graduate with no debt. 8% of the students have an average of $5,000 in debt, which is almost always buying a car their senior year. Now, here's my challenge to all of you. Go back home and propose one work-study college and one work-study vocational technical school for the poorest place in your state.